Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of 2023, Making Wheelchairs Affordable with Participant Assistive Products, a disability tech talk with Keoke King of Participant Assistive Products. I'm Jocelyn Cohen, Vice President of Communications and Engagement with Cerebral Palsy Alliance Research Foundation, or CPARF for short. This event is closed caption enabled, and I've turned on transcription. It's being recorded, and I'll send around a link once it's posted online. For additional accessibility, I'll share a visual description of myself. I'm a white woman with dark brown shoulder-length hair that's down and brown eyes. I'm wearing large blue-green glasses and a light blue turtleneck sweater. Sometimes I may look like my eyes are looking away from the screen or like they're rolling, but that's part of my cerebral palsy. In case this is your first webinar with us, I'd like to tell you a bit about what CPARF does. Despite being the world's most common lifelong physical disability and affecting 18 million people worldwide, cerebral palsy is one of the most underfunded conditions. And that's why CPARF funds research and innovation that will change what it's like to live with CP. Nearly a year ago, we launched a pilot cohort of Remarkable US, a disability tech startup accelerator that's part of the Global Remarkable Accelerator program. And through seed funding, mentorships, deep dives, and support during this initiative, we help startups bring life-changing technology one step closer to the people with disabilities who need it. The world is not built for disabled people, but thankfully, there are companies built for that purpose. And Remarkable US has already worked with them. They're built to fill in the gaps, meet crucial needs, and help people reach goals through access that they've never had before. Participant Assistive Products, a member of our pilot cohort, is one of those companies. They believe in democratizing high-quality assistive products so that no one is left behind. I'm so excited that Participant's Chief Executive Officer and co-founder, Keoke King, is here with us tonight to talk about what they do, how they got started, why they're so driven to make affordable mobility devices, and how they worked to create their latest innovations. Welcome, Keoke. Can you tell us a bit about Participant Assistive Products and your mission?
No, thanks, Jocelyn. Yeah, and so just to describe myself a little bit, I'm a middle-aged white man. I have not quite shoulder-length blonde hair, and I got a black T-shirt on, and it says "Remarkable." So we were in the last Remarkable cohort last summer. Super proud of that. That for our little company, that's one of our big achievements so far. Yeah, so we're called Participant because we're really interested in participation. So we're not we're a B Corp, so we're kind of a profit and purpose company. So the purpose part of our company is about increasing the participation of people with disabilities by making high quality products available. And then we named our company Participant because we want to keep that, social impact goal, kind of front and center all the time. And yeah, that's probably some of the coolest things about us. We love more and more participation.
That is really cool. And, one of the things that we like to say over here is that we fund research and innovation to help people with CP and other disabilities live the lives they envision for themselves. So our missions are very closely aligned in that way. So what moved you to first get involved in assistive technology for people with CP and other disabilities?
Oh, thanks. Well, so my mother's parents, so both mother and father, had accidents when they were kids. This is back when rural Mississippi was a lot like many of the low-income countries where we try to serve. So they had these accidents when they were kids, and then it turned out to be lifelong mobility disabilities. And so when I was a child, my grandmother, raised me a lot. I spent a lot of time with her, and so I got to see her using a cane and a walker, and later on using a wheelchair all the time. So it really made an impression on me. Why are these products why do they look so medical? They're really heavy. They seem really kind of uncomfortable. And then I think later on, I went to business school, and I fell in love with these business leaders like Muhammad Yunus and Yvon Chouinard, who founded Patagonia, who had just these amazing visions to really use their business skills to accomplish some sort of major social goal, some kind of big purpose. And then kind of bringing those things together, I got involved in serving people with disabilities, mostly in lower and middle income countries.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear that disability was just typical for you, like it was in your life in all these different ways, and that even as a child, you noticed that things could just be better than they
Hmm.
were, and you kept that philosophy with you, as you were going through life, and landed in the spot where you are now. So can you share a little bit about your inclusive design philosophy, and maybe how that also dovetails with what you're talking about, even with the appearance, not just the weight of products?
Hmm. Um, yeah. So, um, how to get at this? I think that co-design is really important for us. So, don't we don't want to just be like making things and then kind of like throwing them out in the world and like, surprise, we made it for you. But really, like with Cub, we first first just on Facebook, we came up with a big feature list and we asked all these different contributors, users, and therapists and so on, what do you think? And then we made animations and feedback on that. Now, people really have a tough time commenting on a thing if they don't have the thing. So
Mhm.
we flew around a lot. We flew to Colombia and Mexico and Ukraine and flew to the Middle East and just took the chair a lot of places and let a lot of users and families and caregivers and providers give feedback what they wish was a little bit different, a little bit, so that was the best way. It's not the cheapest way, but not the fastest way, but that's the way we got at it.
I love that though. How long was that kind of information gathering process from when you started doing it online to when you just took it international and flew basically everywhere you could?
Yeah, I would say that R&D project turned out to be longer than we initially expected because of COVID. So
Mm,
for a long period of time, we couldn't get production going because the factories were closed. But we could still engage with people in some ways. So that was like a 3.5 year process of creating prototypes and showing them to people and getting feedback. Yeah.
wow, okay. Out of curiosity, you went to all these different countries. Obviously, you took the things that overlapped and incorporated them as best you could into the Cub wheelchair. Did you find there was like a really wide range of comments, or did people's feedback kind of align in a few different groups or buckets?
Yeah, I think the clinical goals that therapists have are pretty much the same. They want kids to be in a comfortable position and to be supported and so on. And our one of my co-founders, Dave, is a clinician. He's got a ton of experience working in less resource settings. So that feedback was pretty consistent and often not very surprising. We kind of knew about that.
Mhm.
But as we traveled different places, we discovered there's different needs. So sometimes people wanted to get it into a car that was smaller than we expected. So like most of these chairs don't fold and don't go into any cars.
Right.
But then we got to Colombia and we were like, ooh, that's a smaller car trunk than we expected. So we need to make this even a little bit more compact. And we worked with a young lady, and she lived on a farm. And so the chairs, a four-wheel wheelchair, but then you can put a fifth wheel on front, so then it becomes kind of all terrain. And we saw they've got like a horse pasture, and so the father's pushing her around in the horse pasture, and he's demonstrating, wow, when I try to push uphill, this happens. That's not great. Can you fix that? Okay, yeah, we need to fix that. So yeah, so there was a lot of learnings that we got just from getting it out to people and letting them use it in their daily life.
Sure. I mean, I can't imagine all the different terrains you'd face just on that one farm, and all the different thicknesses of things you have to push through. I'm just thinking how hard it is just to walk, as someone with a disability on those terrains. And I know when things get caught in your wheels and make it harder to roll through, it's a much bigger challenge. So you started talking about a little bit about the challenges that you faced while creating it, but is there anything you want to go in a little more depth about, like aside from how to make it collapsible? Was there anything else that presented itself, or that was harder to solve while you were going through this?
Um, yeah, I think in a minute I'll talk more about my co-founder Yoda, but like technically we're pretty. We have a lot of skills on our team, and we've got a lot of good resources for prototyping and so on. To be honest, like the biggest challenge was number one, funding, and number two, market. So there's a lot of really positive things happening now. You could even say this is like a pivotal time for assistive products globally. There's a bunch of new funders. There's a bunch of new governments. There's a lot of new NGOs that are kind of getting into provision training and directly doing provision. So yeah, it's I'm in San Francisco. I know a lot of people that have founded companies, and as I was sharing them like how much we needed to raise and how long it took, they were all kind of like, whoa, that's that was hard. It's like, yep, that was hard. So yeah, I think the funding was challenging, and now now we're seeing that the market really is there. So that was also in some ways a leap, but it is working out.
Yeah, that's huge. For the participant cub, and I know it's just one of the devices that you and your company created. How were you able to make it so affordable?
Yeah, so well, I should mention Yoda. So like the uh, with a lot of hardware products, just you can just kind of think about like how much is it going to cost by how complicated is it and how many parts does it have. So so co-founder Yoda, he's like our Wozniak. He's designed hundreds of manual wheelchairs, and so he's really good that way. And so yeah, he's spent a lot of time like, let's just simplify this thing. If this was 4 parts, let's see if we can make it 1 part. We kind of went from the beginning thinking about really large scale production. And so we went after some big customers, and we were able to get those. And so we don't have to go through the normal company process of like, oh, let's make really small scale production and then we'll move up to medium scale. Like, no, we went for large from the beginning. That gets a lot of cost out.
Okay.
And then yeah, part of it was just thinking about the markets that we want to go for, and what are their cost requirements. So like from the beginning, we were thinking like, okay, this has got to be affordable. So what does that mean for the design? And designing something that is affordable is at least twice as hard as just designing a good thing that's not affordable. So it took some time.
So as far as the price point goes, how much would the cub cost someone? And is it available to folks in all countries, or will it be available to folks in all countries? Like this device, maybe talk a little bit more about it aside from it being, is there anything else people need to know aside from it being foldable and being able to have the 5th wheel? Like what else makes it unique, and who will it be available to, and how much would it cost them? That's kind of a lot
Wow.
in one question, so take it as
No, that's a nice question. That's great. Yeah, okay, so features wise, so kids, with cerebral palsy or other conditions, they, where they need a lot of support. If you're not familiar with these kind of chairs, you can envision like a headrest, and maybe there's lateral supports to help the person sit up straight. So our chair has all of those clinical features. Another big thing is it grows, so we can go all the way from what they call early intervention, from like maybe a child is 3 years old, maybe up into like mid-teens. So where a lot of chairs will last for 3 years, and the child or person will outgrow the chair, the chair expands a lot. And so that's a really an important feature. It does pretty well on all terrain, and then it can also convert and be used in classrooms, like in tight spaces or small homes. So that's important. You mentioned folding, and the folding thing is really like, we wanted to make it work for families that have a lot of different lifestyles. Do they use a car? Do they use a taxi? Do they ride the bus? Do they occasionally use the plane? The chair does well in planes. And then also thinking about also thinking about like the level of skill that the providers have. So this is actually probably a bigger bottleneck than than just the chair being available. Like the providers need a chair that is pretty simple to work with. And so trying to make it usable for providers was another big goal. So I can, and you mentioned about price and like where it's available.
Yeah, what's the price range, if there's a range, or the one price point, and also where is it, or where will it be available, and if there are timelines attached to any of those aspects?
So if you're on the call and you're a distributor or a distributor, then please, please help us connect. We've got distributors lined up for Japan, Australia, South Africa, several countries in Eastern Europe, and we're getting started with Africa. And
Wow.
then we're very interested in Southeast Asia. Vietnam seems like an easy first place, and also Thailand. So in India, we've got a good distributor in India. So in the US, kind of like, the website price will be around $950. And so the chair competes with it's kind of between a stroller and a full, like, full support wheelchair. So there's strollers that it would compete with that would go for around 2,500, and then there's supportive wheelchairs that it would compete with are in the like $5,000 range. So yeah, so we'll just make it available for cash. Family can buy it in the USA if they want to, and then in lower income countries, we have a huge discount for for NGOs. So if they're going to buy the chair and give it away for free, if it's a low income country government, then they can buy large volumes at a big discount.
Right, because they're doing it in bulk. That
Right.
price point, I can't wrap my head around that. Like, I just know how expensive being a person in this country is, and then being a disabled person in this country just adds layers to that. And I like that it's sort of sitting in this transitional space. I know that my parents, I mean, decades ago, my parents would push me around if we were going somewhere where there was a lot of walking involved. They'd push me around in a stroller, and that just felt really weird as like a 7, 8, 9-year-old. And I think it would have felt a lot less weird if I was in something like the Participant Cub. Both like emotionally, just being sitting in a stroller at that age, but also physically, like sitting essentially just on fabric to get me from A to B is not the most comfortable, as I'm sure in all of your
Yeah.
the chair.
Yeah. So yeah, you've kind of, you're really onto something there. So when you think of it, there's probably like 9 million children with cerebral palsy who need a wheelchair in the world, and they don't have one. And so then you kind of ask yourself, well, what how do those kids get around? Like, what happens? So their parents buy a baby stroller, and then the child outgrows the baby stroller, and then maybe there's a bigger stroller available, or the kid just keeps using that stroller. So the child's shoulders will go broader, and the stroller doesn't go any broader. So now they're like really hunched, maybe kind of folding over. There's no support under their knees. The little belt that's in the stroller becomes this totally weird thing. So that's kind of like, it's like the kids either have they're either just at home, or they might have something like that. So then the Cub wheelchair is it's not as big and like dominant visually as a lot of other chairs. There's actually some markets, even in Europe, where the government has like significant funding, but the culture is just not very friendly toward disability. So the parents then want to have something that looks a little bit more, so they're like, okay, we want to have, they like Cub because it looks a little bit more like things that they're familiar with.
Right.
So yeah, those are some things that we were trying to address, because we also recognize for the kids to really get out in the community, it's like, well, their parents need to take them. So it's okay, let's make the chair work good for the caregivers as much as possible.
That's a really huge balance to strike. And it seems like this device is one of the few things that does it. There's just so many overlapping, maybe competing priorities, but not exactly, because the whole priority is to get someone to participate in society. But what a child needs and what the parent needs to be able to help the child might not necessarily overlap. And you've created something that really fills that gap in a great way. So
we hope so. We hope so. This is like version 1, right? So reality is going to hit us in the face pretty soon, and then we'll need to update the product some. But so far it seems to be going really well.
I mean, and you're starting with a great foundation, which leads me to my next question. And you sort of led into it maybe without realizing it, but is there a comparable version of this for adults? Or is it just right now in like the youth age range? And if there isn't a version, like what's on tap for that, if anything?
Yeah, we do want to make an adult version. So one of the things that happens is so, well, first of all, kids with CP grow, right? And so then they need the next chair. But in lower and middle income countries, there's a lot of traffic accidents that are pretty gruesome. So there's a lot of quadriplegics that that need a full supportive chair, and increasingly so. And there's really like nothing available. So yeah, so we will make an adult chair. I don't know if it's going to be like, Cub or Bear or like Cub
I was
Plus,
gonna
or
say,
it's probably going to be, it'll probably be like a, kind of a different looking product, because it will need to be more, not just like, mega Cub. It'll need to be, kind of different.
built a little bit differently, and
Yeah.
maybe with, how you have the add-on wheel, maybe there's other add-on pieces to it, depending on what the adult user needs. But it doesn't make me happy to be reminded that everyone gets into these accidents, but I am happy to know that you're really considering the lifelong nature of disability, whether it's CP that never goes away and you grow up and grow old with it, or it's an acquired disability, because so many different disabilities require mobility devices, whether someone's a full-time wheelchair user or a part-time wheelchair user. Are all the Cub users that you've encountered full-time wheelchair users at this point, or are some of them ambulatory wheelchair users that like maybe can walk in their
Yeah.
home but would never do that outside?
Yeah. Some so Cub, another kind of cool flexibility about Cub is we can put on the big wheels, so the person can, has hand rims and they can push, or they, maybe they can just turn themselves in the room, so it can take those wheels, or it can also take the, like the small wheels in back, like you would think of on a stroller. So yeah, some of the users, especially those that use the big wheels, are able to stand, and so they might be able to transfer to the bed by themselves, or be able to take a few steps and use the furniture in the home as support. So yeah, that's not, there are some kids that are like partial walkers. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of the kids and their parents and caregivers, can you tell us a bit about how they react when they've tried the Cub? So you talked about, when you were gathering this feedback at different stages, but what are some of the reactions that have stuck with you after people have tried this device?
Yeah, so this is a hard question, because when you're when you're making something for people who don't have any other option, they're going to say it's great. And so we have to be really careful with that, because we can think, more positively about the product and is it done yet, than reality, if we only listen to those voices. So yeah, so I mean, there's been a lot of people that receive the chair and they're just totally happy because there's nothing else available, and it's just like, life changing for them, and that's totally awesome and very I love that. But yeah, we've also heard, there's a couple of different countries that I mentioned where they have the government has funding, and there's a lot of other products available. And so when we hear that our products are competing with the big brands that you can look up if you Google pediatric wheelchairs, and see that there's therapists that are saying, oh, okay, we're going to provide the Cub instead because of some good reasons, and the families love it. That is like a great proof point for us.
I didn't think about what you just illuminated, which is that if you're giving something to someone who doesn't have anything that can help them with this, that their perspective is going to be like overwhelming gratitude no matter what, and that's like kind of soul fuel as you're moving through everything, but doesn't maybe help you figure out the next best iteration of what you need to do.
Yeah. If you're developing a product, you want negative feedback. You want enough like encouragement that you don't give up. But you want people to say, okay, so can you make it a little bit more this way or that way? So that's,
yeah. Is there a personal story or two that have struck you and stuck with you and kind of kept you going as you have moved through the different phases of this? Like maybe from that first group, but also maybe from that second group.
Yeah, so we did a it was supposed to be a like a 4-week field trial in Medellin, Colombia, and what happened was, basically I could see when we were in Colombia, and even when we were, just about to leave, I was like, wow, COVID is like here. This is going to be a global, mess. So we told the families, look, so we're not going to go do the next field trial. We're just going to leave the chairs with you because we're clearly like about to go on lockdown.
Right.
And then we did. And so then there's a couple of chairs that stayed with those kids. So one of the things you want to see is, and oftentimes wheelchairs are provided, and then for whatever reason, the parents or the child will reject them. They'll be like, don't want that. But the kids, those two individuals kept using the chair, and that was just a prototype for 18 months, 2 years. I was just amazed that the prototype still worked, but then we're getting so we're getting more and more reports. The child has gone from can't sit in the chair except for an hour. Now they're stronger. They can sit and hold their head up for most of the school day or all day. And then child reached up and gave mom a hug, and that's never happened before. So there was just some really cool things coming out of those family stories that was really great. Yeah.
And it's really fulfilling the guiding philosophy of your company in the first place, which is to have people be able to participate in their lives in ways that they haven't before. On a completely different note, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, and speaking of societal participation. So you and I were speaking a little bit before. I have a lot of friends with disabilities. Some of them have CP, some of them have other disabilities, and a lot of them are wheelchair users. And while they'd love to travel, they don't necessarily do so, or every time they do, they cross their fingers and get scared that when they get to their destination, that their wheelchair will arrive intact. They make signs that say, "This is my legs, please don't break them, don't break it." And still things arrive on the other end. So they arrive on the other end kind of broken. How do you think Cub can help solve this problem, or for the to be created adult size mobility device could help solve this problem in the future, or maybe even now?
Yeah, I mean, I think so we don't have a solution for this. I'm not this is a super difficult problem, especially if you're talking about power chairs. So my understanding is that the door that all the baggage goes into, so you see the little ramp, rolling ramp thing. So I think it's, for a lot of wheelchairs, it's just not wide enough. So then the baggage handlers are kind of like, okay, well, we have to roll it up on its side. It's not designed for that. And so but Boeing and the other big companies need to see that this is a real need, and solve that problem. It's not just Southwest being sloppy.
No, it's every airline I've seen. People want to say, I had a great experience on X airline, and then someone will come back and be like, well, that's the airline that broke my wheelchair. Or I had a horrible experience on Y airline, and someone will say oh, that's the airline that I always use because they've never broken my. And it's really just a game of chance. And it's interesting because I've never heard it described that way, that it has to do with the width of the baggage door in the belly of the plane, and that it could potentially, at least partially, be solved by just widening that door.
Yeah. In fact, this is a good fact check, Keoke, not my professional area, but that is what I've heard. So why is Cub doing better? It's because we designed the chair to fold up and go in small cars. And so, if it can go in small cars, then it will, that you can just throw it on the baggage carousel like you would any of your other checked bags. And then especially as I was taking it around the world to show all those different places, I got, kind of pleasantly surprised. Wow, it's done like the one prototype, I think it did like 14 airplane legs before we retired it, and it never had a problem. So
That's huge.
yeah, and sometimes I would, I'm like pitching to investors, and I'm gonna unfold the chair and set it up while all the funders are watching me. I'm like, it worked again, great. So,
Good. All this world travel didn't tucker the whole
yeah.
thing out. So I mean, you can't solve the baggage mishandling, and you can't solve the width of the door problem, but you've designed this device that can withstand the travel, that's not then gonna arrive and be unusable, even if someone chucked it into the baggage hold.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that to me is a solution to the problem, at least for the people that you currently serve. And it's really exciting to me because the amount of stress that I know either my friends or just disabled people on social media experience, then I like absorb that, because it's a reminder that, like I said earlier, society wasn't built for disabled people, and we have to trust people inherently, and be interdependent on people more so than most non-disabled people. And that is like the ultimate act of trust, is basically giving your legs over to someone to throw in the bottom of an airplane and hope they get where you need them to go. So I love that this is a solution, at least in certain realms, and that it could potentially be a solution for more folks as you build out your product line in the years to come.
Yeah. And so one thing that's also kind of interesting for us as we're thinking about low and middle income countries is, just because we start making bigger chairs or power chairs, the vehicles that are available there don't suddenly balloon in size. So we still have to work with these size constraints. So so when we begin making power chairs, like we're really thinking about power add-ons. It's got to be something where somebody gets to the trunk into the car, and they take off their battery, and then they take off the power unit, and then they take the wheels off, and they fold the thing up and put it in. And it all has to go in the trunk. So that'll be like our approach to power mobility. Very very different than something that Permobil would make. Like we don't want to do that, because even if we did it really well and really affordably, it wouldn't help our users. Like they still would be like, oh, I can't go anywhere, I can motor around my home. So,
right.
Yeah.
But I cannot participate more widely in my life, which is like
Exactly.
your ultimate goal with everything that you're doing. And building on that, besides what we've talked about, is there any other mobility technology that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so the next big thing for us is we want to make an active adult folding chair, and we're just about to do some fundraising, and then we'll hopefully release it, like I'd say late this year or next year. And this is kind of like a baby step toward a much bigger project. So we'll make this product, and it'll be a normal like aluminum tube frame product. We'll get all the features and all the dimensions figured out, make sure that it works really well, and then we'll use a new manufacturing technology that I won't give details about, that will allow us to get the cost of that product down by probably 40%.
Wow.
So when we've got that, there'll be this totally awesome very very rigid adult folding chair that we'll be able to attach power add-on to, which that's kind of unusual. Usually folding chairs don't take power add-ons. And it'll be something that will be affordable, and also something that we can set up local assembly. So a lot of middle income countries, governments really get bummed when they take their tax dollars and spend it on things that come from some faraway factory. So if we're able to put the the assembly plant like in Brazil, then that's like the cost goes down. People see it as made here. We can employ some people with disabilities. There's like lots of really great things about that. So that's like a next big project for us.
That's really exciting on all the levels you just shared, for so many reasons, because going into all these different places, there are needs that overlap, like we've talked about, and there are needs that are different. And so even if you're just having these local plants, like the needs of that community are different, and you can you can shape everything to where you're going to be, and like shape everything to what participating in life in that place and space is. So like America is very different from Brazil, is very different from Ukraine, is very different from the other places that you've been. And to know that it can look a bit different and still get people what they need is really exciting for me as a person that's interested in technology and as a disabled person on top of that.
Yeah.
My last question before we go to any audience questions, which people can submit in the Q&A, is
Please.
is we've talked a lot about this. So if there's anything that you missed, what do you really hope that Participant achieves in 2023 and beyond?
Oh, okay. Well, so the big thing for this year is we'll have our first equity raise. So this will be the first time that people other than the founders can buy a part of Participant. We'll have a we'll put it on WeFunder. I think by law I'm not able to talk about the details of the terms, but yeah. So we will stay tuned. It'll be on WeFunder, so so even small investors can get involved. And yeah, that's definitely the big thing for us. We need to do this first, like a seed round is what a lot of people would call it.
Okay, that's helpful to know, because as a user or a potential user of assistive technology down the line, I'm very much just focused on like, what is the thing that is going to help me? It's not that I don't know that there's all this stuff going on in the background, but it's not the aspect of it that I pay the most attention to. So it's helpful to know sort of what you have to go through in order to get your product to the people who need it as soon as possible. You're doing a lot of great work. I'm personally very moved by this entire conversation and by what you've achieved thus far and what you're looking to achieve. I think the disabled community needs more allies like you at the helm of companies and organizations, so that we can get more things like this achieved.
You just don't know me very well. There's dark side in there. So, but we won't talk about that on podcast. But yeah, so the market opportunity is massive. So we've taken Cub to a couple of different trade shows, and the distributors in South Africa and Brazil and lots of middle income countries are just super excited, because they usually don't have good quality, like the clinical standards that we have in the US and Australia and Europe are just really pretty high and very high in comparison to what's usually available in the kind of affordable category. So so we've gotten a really good response from a lot of distributors. It seemed like there really is a good opportunity to serve a lot of people and build a pretty big company. So we're pretty jazzed about that. The last 6 months has been really great.
It's fantastic. I'm going to give people like a minute or so if they want to pop something into the Q&A. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we'll post this online. So if you're watching this on YouTube and there were questions that popped up for you that Keoke and I didn't cover, feel free to leave them in the comments or email us with them, and we'll be happy to share them and share the answers with you as they come up. I just want to thank you, Keoke, for joining us, for taking the time to share your motivations, to share what your company does. And I see a question coming in before I continue my thanks to you. Someone asked, what's considered a large volume for Participant, regarding your comment about discounts for non-government organizations?
Well, that's a good question. So before this job, I worked for a couple of other companies that made products that sold to nonprofits or NGOs or low-income country governments. So the volume discount thing is really kind of a bummer, because if you say, oh, you need to buy a container load, like those huge metal boxes that go on the boats, there's like 250 or 300 chairs in there. So if you say MOQ 250, now whoever the buyer is, they need to come up with like like $60,000 or like some huge amount of money. So then the problem is a lot of the groups that are serving people with disabilities in, in these different places are really small, and they just don't have like anything close to that kind of funding.
Right.
So what we've done is we have our social impact price, and it's just a low price. So if if someone approaches me and they say, look, we really are a nonprofit, we have some evidence for that, then we'll give them access to those prices, and if they want to buy 5 chairs, that's fine.
Okay. That's another logistical thing that I did not think about, just having to fill a shipping container, and if you're not ordering enough to fill the shipping container, that you have to come up with a lot more to do so, or be out of luck in getting that. So it's great that you're flexible in that regard.
Yeah, and it creates some kind of sad dynamic. So the small NGO and that's local, it's like if they want to get product, they have to partner with a big NGO, which probably has a headquarters in DC or Berlin or Paris or something. And so it's like the big NGOs kind of mediate everything, but we're just like, no, like if the little NGO wants to do this, like we'll work with them. There's no reason for everything to kind of like flow through those. It also becomes financially pretty inefficient too, but that's like another whole podcast. So my long NGO history.
I'll bookmark that for another conversation. The person who asked that question is also wondering if the wheelchair comes pre-assembled.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So assembly takes like 5 minutes, and we have little videos and user manuals on how to do that. It comes if you're in this field, one of the things that is different is we put in the box basically like everything that most kids need. So like the headrest and the laterals and the seat cushion, the back cushion, the leg rest. Those in the U.S. market, those are all sold separately from the base and the wheel. So we're like, oh, that's all in the box, one price, and also an activity tray. So all that's in the box, and then you can choose either big wheels or small wheels that way. The fifth wheel add-on and the like knee separator of the abductor is separate.
Yeah. That knee separator is helpful for even people who aren't wheelchair users to keep things in alignment. Like some version of that is not in a wheelchair. I will just share from my own experience. So we have 3 questions that popped up.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I'll ask the first one. Since you're looking for distributors and connections in different areas of the world, where would be the top places that you're looking for those right now?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. So like kind of like Eastern and Southern Europe are like very interesting places. Romania, even Hungary, Bulgaria, everything in the Balkans is interesting, because those governments have reimbursement, and this probably we'll be able to do well there. Like it's not too hard to get started. The profit margin for us is going to be great. But then, there's other places where we'd really like to be. Nigeria is going to be like the 3rd most populous country in the world here in like 20 years. So that's a really important market for us to get into, and we don't have any connections. So, so that's important. Mexico is a challenging market, and we'd like to do some pioneering work there, but we need more good partners. Teleton in particular. So if somebody can get us a field trial with Teleton, that would be super awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question I have here is, do you think there will be a shift in how people have access to mobility tech like your products? Will it be a direct to consumer situation, or more about getting buy-in from governments or healthcare providers?
Yeah, so that's all about how governments decide to do the reimbursement. So in Australia, they put the government money in the family's pocket. So they say, based on the diagnosis, your allotment is, $15,000 per year for all your different assistive products. Go, go buy what you need, and the clinicians will advise and demo and do the provision and all that kind of stuff. So in that case, it's like you have your money and you go buy what you want on Amazon, right? So that's a very empowered, user empowered situation, versus like, the extreme opposite, which we know about because we're here. So, yeah. So I think our attitude is like, the least friction, the least layers is better. So we just want to sell, like when we offer it in the USA, we'll just put it on Amazon and it's there. People can order it and buy it. And the reason that we dial our company to operate that way instead of through all the normal layers and so on is because in the lower income countries, whatever money is available can't support all those layers. Like all those layers create a lot of, sometimes good services and sometimes waste. And we're just interested, let's keep the cost as low as it can possibly be, and put it on e-commerce. So for us, we'll go that way. The industry in general will follow whatever the government reimbursement frameworks are, because that's the best way to make a commercial profit. Wow, that was a long and maybe boring answer. I'm sorry for that.
I mean, it was long, but I wouldn't say that it's boring, because navigating the healthcare system is exhausting, and you don't know what you don't know until maybe you know it. But even if you then know it, you might not know it. And so the idea that someone could go on Amazon or just like on the internet, click a button, use their credit card and get this wheelchair in their house in this country, and not have to deal with the added stress and like time wasting that comes with trying to get coverage, and then maybe you're covered and then they say actually you're not covered, and then you have to play all the fun games with it. So like, yes, that was a long answer, but it came to this really important conclusion, which is ease of access is your goal, and that's what you're going to be doing. And depending on what that particular person who asked the question was anonymous. I don't know where they're based. I don't know if they're based here or somewhere else. But it's helpful to know, because it does differ around the world, and it's more difficult here for different reasons than it is difficult in other places for other reasons. So thank you for that answer. And then the last question that's in the Q&A box is there an opportunity for folks in the US to see you at a conference in 2023?
Yeah, so I'll be at ISS in Pittsburgh. That's coming up in April, and I'm totally looking forward to that. I don't know about other than that. So if the individual wants to email me, our website address is participant.life, participant.life. And I'm Keoke, Keoke at participant.life, and we can try to find a meetup. Okay.
I know that at different, conferences or events like the Abilities Expo, which has a few different iterations. Like I know there's one in New York, I know there's one in Chicago, there may be one in other parts of the country. People that I know that have been to those have come away feeling great, because there's so much out there to help people. And there's like a disconnect sometimes between what's available or what's going to be available and the people with disabilities who are going to need those products. And so one of the goals of this conversation, this webinar, the podcast that we do, and all the messaging that we put out is we're trying to be the bridge over that gap, so that people know what's out there, and also frankly, like, know that people care, because it can be a bit hostile, depending on where you are, to being a disabled person. And so to know that there are people like you and companies like yours doing what you're doing to help people like us, it's a big lift to our spirits. I know like that's not the main reason that you're doing it, but it has that positive effect. It's not just, oh, you gave me the mobility device that I needed. It's like, oh, you actually care. So it's really just, I can't overstate how important that is. I say this especially as an adult with CP, because it's a whole different world once you turn 18 or 21 in this country. But to know, like, yes, that the main product that you're working on right now is for younger folks, but that you have an eye towards adults with disabilities, and you're already thinking about different ways to do that, like, that's a huge amount of promise. And I know that my wheelchair using friends are going to be excited about that. And all the people I don't know who are wheelchair users who see this conversation, or their parents or their caregivers, even if it ends up being, like a secondary wheelchair, like
Yep.
you have wheelchairs for different purposes. And then if you had something like this that met certain needs that worked for you, but didn't necessarily meet everything, but you could take it as your travel wheelchair, and then take that huge amount of anxiety and stress away from yourself or your parent or caregiver when you're like, who wants to stress out that much when they're trying to go somewhere fun? No one. And it's already such a stressful experience, even if you're not a wheelchair user. So like taking that stress away, that's like a real life impact of the fact that you care. So I just want to reiterate that to you, in case you needed like more motivation on your Tuesday to keep doing.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you again for joining us, and wanted to let everyone know to keep an eye on your inbox. There's a lot going on, and you can learn more about Remarkable US. Our new cohort is coming along this year. Can't say much about it yet, but I'm really excited about it. Keoke, I mean, you experienced it firsthand, and we have other upcoming programs, webinars, podcast episodes. Before I let you go, Keoke, is there anything else you'd like to share with folks?
No, I think we've had a really great conversation, Jocelyn. I've enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you so much for facilitating.
Thank you. I just want to, and Michael said you should go to the Abilities Expo.
All right, Michael.
I didn't want to miss
always
that.
take Michael's advice. Yeah.
Yeah, you should go to that. Like, people would be allowed to try out your device at the Abilities Expo, right? So
yeah.
So they can see firsthand what you've described, see it in real time, see how it fits them or the person that they're caring for. I really have had such a great conversation with you. I hope we do this again in some capacity, and that you and everyone watching this enjoy the rest of your night or day, wherever you may be. Take care.
Very good. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.